What's going on, everyone, and welcome to the newest edition of the Bronx Muchachos podcast. I'm David, and I'll be your host for tonight's festivities. As Mark is unable to make it tonight, I'm joined by my co-host, Danny.
Yeah, what's good, everybody?
Alex.
Hello.
And, of course, Scott Sandman Sanders.
What's happening, fellas?
But before we get started tonight, go ahead and do us a favor and smash that like and subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. As always, go to our website, www.bronxmuchachos.com, for all the latest and greatest from our vendors such as Lids, Fanatics, Amazon, and of course, Geek. Use promo code BronxMuchachos, all one word. Save $20 off your first purchase. Tonight, we are joined by a very special guest this evening. This guest was drafted by the New York Yankees in the 48th round of the 1987 MLB Amateur Draft out of Cheshire Academy in New Haven, Connecticut. He was taken by the Colorado Rockies in the expansion draft. He was traded then to San Diego in July of 1993, making his debut behind the dish for the Padres on July 28th of 1993. He would then go on to play 18 seasons in Major League Baseball as a catcher for the Padres, Tigers, Astros, playing in the 2005 World Series, and the Dodgers in 2010, wrapping up his career, collecting 1,579 hits, 607 RBIs, 270 doubles, 34 triples, 80 home runs, 102 stolen bases. He's a three-time Gold Glove winner and a 1999 All-Star with the Detroit Tigers, fourth all-time in putouts, eighth most innings caught in Major League history by a catcher. Ladies and gentlemen, Yankees fans around the world, it is an honor to introduce retired MLB catcher and the new bench coach of the New York Yankees, Brad Ausmus. Brad, how are you? Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and thanks for making me realize why my name fell off the Hall of Fame ballot after one time. When you read my career stats, now I'm going, that's why I fell off the ballot.
Sorry, Coach. It came from a good place, didn't come from a bad place.
I know. I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm not kidding, but I'm kidding.
All right, I guess I deserved it. So, Brad,
it just means that the voters need to take a little bit closer look. You're right behind Johnny Bench and E. War.
It's too late. I fell off the ballot. I guess I can bank on the committee. The committee voting me in, but I don't think that's going to happen.
The veterans, you got to shout at the veterans. Hey, at least you're able to get on that list, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, you automatically get in, I think, if you had a certain number of years or games played.
Yeah, 10 years. Yeah, no, it's good though.
So I want to start at the beginning. We've done this. We did this with Scott. We did this with Tanyan Sturz when we had him on in August. We've kind of talked to current and former players about what their draft day experience was like starting at the beginning. So let's start at the beginning. Take us back to 1987. What was draft day like for you when you were first called that you got drafted by the Yankees?
So just to frame it up, it was, remember, no cell phones. This was back when the draft was unlimited number of rounds. As long as teams wanted to keep selecting players, they could keep selecting players. So, it went sometimes up into the 70s in terms of rounds. And the first, I had some interest. There were scouts around. I've gotten letters from scouts from different organizations. Been to a few organizational tryouts, the Yankees being one of them. But I wasn't really keyed in on the draft because I in my mind, I was just going to go to college. I had agreed to go to Dartmouth College, good, Ivy League school, good education. My dad was a college professor. My mom always was pushing me to go to college. And so I didn't really pay attention to the draft all that much. In fact, it's not like today where guys are, the draft wasn't televised. There really was no computers they weren't commonplace. So I just went about my day. It was the third day of the draft, and I was at a buddy's house, and my mom called the house on the house phone because, like I said, no mobile phones. And they said, "Hey, the Yankees called. You got drafted." And it was kind of anticlimactic. And then to make it even more anticlimactic, I ended up being a draft and follow. So the Yankees called and said, "We have to offer you a contract within 10 days per the bargaining agreement." They said, we're offering you $1,000, but do not take it. That's exactly what they said. Said, do not take it.
Wow.
We're gonna watch you play all summer, and then we're gonna either say we're not interested or we're gonna up the ante.
Interesting.
Yes.
So, and just to carry through, so they did. They watched me play summer ball. I played American Legion ball in Connecticut, and they had this coach, or scout Joe DiCarlo out of New York, out of the city, that would come watch me play. Saw me multiple times, and at the end of the summer, Joe DiCarlo and Paul Turco, the original scout who scouted me and drafted me, I was on vacation with my parents in Cape Cod, and they took us to lunch, and they upped their ante to $20,000 in school. And I again initially turned it down, thought about it. They said, if you change your mind. Happened to be driving home the next day back to my house in Connecticut, and I changed my mind, and my parents were supportive. And Paul Turco, I got home, called him. He drove down that night, and I signed.
Nice.
Now, the Dartmouth coach wasn't that happy about it, but
Yeah.
but it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well. Danny, you're up.
That's an awesome draft day kind of experience. It lasted a couple months there, but being from where you're from, like you kind of be a Yankees fan or a Red Sox fan. Where did your allegiance lie growing up? We're not going to judge you. It's okay.
No, I know. Trust me. I've been asked this question before. So I was really, where I grew up in Connecticut, just outside of New Haven. I was in no man's land. It was either Yankees or Red Sox and a smattering of Mets fans. The difference in my house was my mom is from Brookline, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, and kind of raised me as a Red Sox fan. So I was actually a Red Sox fan growing up. And then it was the great irony to my mom that the Yankees drafted me.
I grew up in Rhode Island, so I grew up right in the thick of it. And my cousins, after 2004, they were like, "Hey, Dave, so when are you going to convert and finally root for the Red Sox?" I was like, the day I light myself on fire, because it's not going to happen. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
But I think Rhode Island leans much more towards Red Sox than Connecticut.
They do. It's kind of it's a weird mix. I'm a Yankees fan because of my dad and my grandfather, and that's how that worked out. But totally get what you're saying, though.
All right. So, Brad, can you share some highlights from your playing career back in major leagues?
I mean, there's a couple highlights, not a ton. Like I said, it wasn't a Hall of Fame career, but there was a few, like the All-Star game in '99 in Fenway Park. The team I grew up rooting for ends up being the only All-Star stadium that I play in. That was exciting. Certainly the World Series in '05, my only World Series, although we lost and got swept by the White Sox, but awesome, very surreal. You play all season long, you got the out-of-town scoreboard, and you're watching what other teams are doing, and then you get in the World Series, and it's just you. There's no. It was weird that you didn't look up to see how other teams were doing, because even in the playoffs, you're looking to see how other teams are doing. Mm-hmm. There's no other games to look at. It's just you and the team on the other side of the field. So that was surreal, but all tremendous experience. The home run I hit in 2005 against the Braves to tie the game in the bottom of the ninth is probably my biggest hit that I had. Just to kind of give you some perspective on when I was playing, how my thought process was. So I have what I call no rear view mirror. Like I'm not looking behind me. I might learn from what's happened and is behind me now, but I don't concentrate on that. So I remember hitting this home run, when there's no replay. So when the umpire gives this, I'm like, all right, the game's tied. I remember rounding third base and thinking, okay, if we don't win the game right now, who's coming up for the Braves? So I'm always looking at what's next. Lance Berkman, used to make fun of me because I'd come across home plate after a home run, and I looked like I was carrying suitcases with dead bodies in them. Like I wasn't even happy about it. But the truth is, I was always just focused on what we had to do next, because until you win the game's, it keeps going.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let's stay on this train for a little bit. 2005 playoffs on the National League side, I was totally paying attention to, mainly because two of our guys that one I grew up watching my entire life, Andy Pettitt, and then Roger Clemens, when they went over to Houston. I want to cry, but be that as it may, what was it like catching both of them and playing with both of them?
They're great. They're great teammates. They're great guys. Still count them among my friends that I played with. Stay in touch to this day. They're both, the one thing they have in common, very intense on game day. When it's not game day, not as intense, but game day, very intense until they're out of the game. And bullpen session in between starts, very intense. Like their focus is at 110%. They're not messing around. This is their job, and they know they need to perform well. I don't know if that was born in them, if they learned it, but that was the thing they had in common more than anything else. Obviously, they were very close at the time as well, and the work ethic was phenomenal. And I think Andy probably would give Rocket a lot of credit in guiding him towards that type of work ethic, but I'm sure he also had it before to make it to the big leagues. Rocket, obviously a seasoned veteran. Andy had some experience too as well, but Rocket was at the time, I think 41-ish when I played with him, 40, 42, 142. Still won a Cy Young, arguably had a better season the next year and didn't win a Cy Young because his record wasn't as good. Andy Pettitt, to this day, pitched the single gutsiest game I've caught. We were playing against the Mets. He can barely break 85. He's trying to get the ball to me. He's keeping it. It's like a 2-1 game. He finally relents and says, I think Garner was the manager. He finally relents and says, I can't go anymore. And I think he went about 4 innings, maybe 4+ innings. He comes out of the game. Keep in mind, he's pitching his tail off despite throwing 85 because he's got that focus. Next day, his elbow is purple, and he's out the rest of the year for surgery.
Whoa!
But it was the most impressive thing I ever think. He was in so much pain and continued to throw.
That's when he had Tommy John surgery the following season.
Yeah, I think he had it, and it rolled into the season. Yeah, or next season.
Yeah, 2006. Yeah.
Hey, Brad.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Brad. The one thing I always tell a lot of people, obviously, a lot of people always ask me about who's my favorite catchers. Obviously, you've always been one of my favorites, if not probably the favorite. Because obviously we started together and everything. But one thing I always tell everybody about you is, to me, you kind of reinvented the catcher position. They used to have Gary Carter, Johnny Bench, the 6'5", 240-pound guys that couldn't run out of their shadow. And then you came back there as like basically a middle infielder, behind the plate, a nice low crouch, a nice compact target, obviously blocking balls. Like, thank God I would have had like 250 pass balls. It wasn't for Brad, to be honest, with my slider in the dirt. But, when you look back, like, think about guys that you started. When you started, wasn't many guys athletic as you were behind the plate. And now look at baseball. It's like 85% of every catcher is based like you. So I always tell people all the time, to me, I feel like you kind of changed the game of baseball.
I feel like that's a nice way of you saying I'm small.
No. You're actually not small. You're a little shorter than me, but I'm saying you're athletic. Like, you could have played, in my opinion, you could have played shortstop probably, or second base, middle infield. But, like, you know what I mean? It's just,
I do know what you're saying. You talk about like Carlton Fisk and Gary Carter's name. You mentioned that they were kind of the big guys behind the plate. I do think people became more open to smaller athletic catchers. I think of Russell Martin, who I played with in LA at the end of my career. he was kind of towards the beginning of his career. He was probably the single most athletic person I've ever played with.
Wow.
And he was an infielder that became a catcher. You know, he caught most of his life, but he also played infield. And I do think they're not afraid. Jason Kendall's another guy who was very athletic at the same time I was in the game. I do think some people became more open. They didn't stereotype catchers as having to be big, you know, burly guys. They were open to the idea that it could be smaller, athletic, maybe even steal a few bases.
Yep.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So, Brad, like, so who are the guys that kind of helped you out throughout your career, mentor-wise, or someone that you looked up to in the game that, you know, you're like, hey, I want to emulate my game after this person, or someone that had a big influence on you?
That, you know, when you play for, you know, 18 years in major leagues, 5.5 years in the minor leagues, you come across a lot of people that have had an impact in your career. When I was in the minor leagues with the Yankees, a guy named Mark Booter Hill, who was a catcher in the big leagues, he was our roving catching instructor, and he actually helped me out quite a bit. He really taught me a lot about the catching position, because remember, back when I was growing up, we didn't have drive line or training, you know, catching camps, or none of that stuff existed. You basically played Little League and summer ball and whatever you were playing, Babe Ruth ball or Mickey Mantle ball, and you kind of just played. So he was the first person that actually kind of taught me stuff about catching that I didn't just learn on my own as I grew up. Brian Butterfield is another guy who, you know, he was around the big leagues as a coach. And even later in my career, guys like Joe Torre had an impact when I was in LA, the way he handled players, treated players, the respect that he got from the people around him as a result of it, the way he treated them. And there's a bunch of people, and Phil Garner, he took the time to explain a lot of things to me when I was in Detroit. And there's also teammates. You know, you see how guys like Jeff Bagwell or Craig Biggio, how they go about their business. Trevor Hoffman, another guy, goes about his business extremely well, dedicated to his craft. So there's bits and pieces you take from people along the way. And then there's bits and pieces you come across that you're like, you know, that's not for me. I'm not going to do it that way, or, you know, this isn't going to help my game. So you take it from the positive side and you take it from the negative side.
Makes sense. So we're talking about managers and everything like that. How did how do you approach building a team chemistry and fostering team positive clubhouse culture as a manager then?
I think, you know, I did it. You know, in spring training, I think a lot of that camaraderie is built up. This is where the young players can be kind of indoctrinated to the older players, so that when they come up during the middle of the season, having never been in the big leagues, there's a comfort level for them getting there because they know some of the people, and there's a comfort level for the veteran players that are already there seeing this familiar face again. So a lot of it takes place in spring training, and, you know, whether it's some fun, maybe in some morning meetings, or making some guys go out and do some extracurricular activities, whether it's, you know, they go bowling together, or make them go golfing, or make the guy who's making the most money buy a few guys dinner, or whatever it may be. You know, I would even have a rule that players under 3 years weren't allowed to drive in spring training unless they went with a veteran who had more than 3 years.
That's
so
awesome.
it kind of brings those groups together, and they can somewhat get divided. Also try to blend the position player and pitchers, make them do things together, because those, especially in spring training, those two groups are often segregated.
That's actually not a bad idea. I didn't actually quite think of it that way, but that's actually a pretty good idea. Hey, you two, you guys are going to hang out and do stuff.
I mean, it really is, because like you're getting all the diverse personalities to actually mingle and then understand, because they're going to be with each other all summer long at the end of it all. So it helps out. So that way everyone has that camaraderie and that they're a team. So I love it.
Yeah, we had a when I was with Detroit, we had some type of contest with some players, and whoever won it, I can't remember. I think it was 2 players. There was this kind of air museum not far from Lakeland, and we sent someone over to talk to him, and whoever won the contest that we had, those 2 guys got to jump into a bi-wing airplane, a bi-wing prop plane like Snoopy.
Right.
And they flew right by one of the games in Lakeland when we were playing one of the spring training games. So you have a little fun while you can in spring training. You know, obviously you want to keep everyone healthy, but stuff like that.
All right. So one thing I wanted to ask you about, because when you were a catcher, obviously it was when guys could still pretty much run you over, and it was like being a hockey goalie pretty much. So in 2000, from 98 to 08, you were one of 4 players that played in that 10-year span that had never ended up on what's now called the IL. So this is a 2-parter. How were you able to do this being a catcher back in the day when, like I said, that you could still get ran over pretty much? Because I was just thinking about this yesterday. Like, I can't imagine having Albert Pujols just like bulldoze me and not get hurt. And was there anything in particular that you did throughout your career during the season to keep you healthy and injury free?
First, I think going to the avoiding the IL/DL I stayed off of it my entire career until my very last season. In 2010, I got the 3rd game of the season. I ruptured a disc and I missed the next 3 months. But there's a little bit of luck involved there, a little bit of genetics involved there. I got real lucky at one point because I actually cut my wrist open and I had stitches. But it was 3 days before the All-Star break, so they avoided putting me on the DL. And then by the time the All-Star break was over, I was able to get the stitches out and start playing again. So I got a little lucky that one time. In terms of collisions at the plate, it's funny you mentioned AP, Albert Pujols. It was never the big guys
Really
that hurt the most. It was the low, fast guys, the guys who really fast, low to the ground. Because I'm kind of on like Sandman has already alluded to, I'm not a huge guy. So when a big guy is coming at me, yeah, I can hurt, but I'm probably lower than they are. But when a little guy gets down there where I'm at, then and they can really run, that's when I've gotten my clock clean the most. I had one with Scott Pasednik. I wish I had video of this. I got knocked out. It was so bad that Chris Berman put me on his best NFL hits of the week because it happened during the season.
Oh man!
It was a single. Pasednik was on second. There's a single to right. The throw comes in from right field. I have my hockey style mask on. I'm getting the throw and I turn and Pasednik hits me right here. Mask goes flying. This is in Minute Maid Park. Mask goes flying, ends up by the dugout, by the first base dugout, the home dugout.
Wow.
I'm out cold. I get spun around, land on my face, chest down. And my hands, my glove are behind me, but the ball somehow, even though I'm out cold, stays in my glove. And Pasednik is out. Pasednik's called out. The pitcher, Chad Qualls, has to pick the ball up out of my glove because I'm unconscious to make sure the guy who got the single doesn't advance to second.
Right.
And within a few seconds, I come to, but I am frazzled. The trainer comes out. He's like, "What? Who are we playing?" I kind of look over his shoulder. I go, "Oh, we're playing the Brewers." He goes, what's the score? I go, oh, it's 2-1. I'm looking at the scoreboard. And this is just at the beginning when concussions became a big deal.
Right.
And somehow I talked my way into staying in the game. We were all at the mound. I finally said, I'm going back to catch. So I go back and I get behind the plate. Lyle Overbay is in the box. And I'm looking at him and I can't remember the scouting report, how to get him out. And we're in the playoff hunt. This is September. I call timeout again. I go back out. Manager and trainer comes back out. I tell them, I said, listen, just give me a second. I'm a little scrambled. I'm trying to remember how we pitch over Bay. And then it kind of came to me. I said, I got it. And I leave. Everyone clears the mound. Umpire lets me, umpire goes back. I call a couple pitches, ground ball, second base. I think it was second base. Guy's out at first, inning over. I'm leading off the next inning. Second pitch, hanging curveball. Popped it up. I come back in, trainer goes, hey, how you doing, man? I go, clearly I'm fine. I just popped up a hanging curveball. but cooler heads prevailed, and Garner and the trainer said, no, you're done.
You're done. Sit down.
Yeah.
Game over.
At that point, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But that was an interesting one. I remember after the game, I'm looking at the video of the whole thing, and I'm only remember chunks of it. Like, I don't remember this. I don't remember this. I remember chunks. And that's kind of like, there's probably like a 5 to 7 minute time of my life where I literally had no recollection of it whatsoever.
Oh, wow. Man. Oof.
That's scary.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
and now we know how big a deal concussions are now.
Yeah.
Now concussions are taken a lot more seriously.
100%.
Yeah, way more.
100%. There's a ball in the dirt, the guy's coming out. Forget about it. But so just winning plays. Like, I feel like, you're a winning player, and winning consistently in the big leagues is just extremely difficult. I kind of want to switch to like a Yankee question here. What are some things that you look for in a winning clubhouse and culture, and how do you anticipate contributing to that in this Yankees clubhouse and winning in 2024?
By all accounts, and I haven't gotten there yet, by all accounts, the clubhouse is really good in terms of the players and how they get along with one another. That's what I'm hearing up and down. I think the most difficult thing is to get everyone to care. This seems so obvious because when you play growing up, you care about winning. Baseball's such an individual sport, and there's so much money involved that a lot of times young players, they want to establish themselves as big leaguers, and they want to, they all want to make money, or they want to get a long-term contract and then, provide for their family, et cetera. And it's completely understandable. I get why they do it. But as a result, a lot of the times, and this is not everybody, but a lot of the times, the winning isn't at the top of the list until you start. Once you've made your money, once you get that contract, that's all you care about. There's nothing else that you really want. You just want to win. And getting the young guys on board with winning being the priority sometimes can be a challenge. Some players have it. They know it. They get it. But sometimes that can be a challenge. I don't know if that's, from, like I said, from what I've heard, that's not an issue with the Yankees. But that has been a challenge in the past, I think, for coaches and managers across baseball, just because of the nature of the game and the finances involved.
Right.
That's actually really good. So what are some of the most important lessons you have learned that influenced you as a manager? Like, especially when it comes towards this new season coming up for us.
Well, I do think, and I learned this as a player as well as a manager, but you as a manager, it becomes exponentially more important, is you do have to have some patience. There's such a, especially with all the attention on sports teams nowadays, the social media attention, sometimes you have to have patience, even though everyone thinks because it's not working right now, there should be a change. Baseball is a game that's supposed to be played over 106, or a sport that's supposed to be played over 162 games. And guys are going to slump. Guys are going to struggle. There are times when, yes, you may have to make a change, and it may be a difficult change with a player that you don't want to make a change with. But I do think you have to be patient with players and understand that it is a difficult game, and it tends to be a game of streaks. Very few players go from day one to day 162 and rake all year long. Even Trout, Mike Trout, who I had, he went through tough times. Aaron Judge has gone through tough times. But when the season's all said and done, they're going to have their numbers. So I think patience is the one thing you really have to learn. And it's not just with players. Sometimes it's with the media. Sometimes it's with the front office. I do think that's essential if you're going to be in the manager's seat.
Right. Brad, real quick. You just mentioned Trout. It was funny the other day. We finished the show and got off the air, and some people thought Trout's a Hall of Famer. Some people don't. What would you say? Number one is number one.
Do I hear a bus going by, Scott? Is that what I
Is
hear,
Mike Trout
bro?
the best player you probably have ever managed? And if he's not, who would be? And do you think, obviously, Trout's got to finish his career, but do you think he's on the path to be a Hall of Famer?
Oh, there's no question. I think he is a Hall of Famer. I've actually had quite a few good players. If you think of the list of names I've had as a manager, I mean, Miguel Cabrera, Albert Pujols, Mike Trout, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, David Price, Ian Kinsler. Not all these guys are Hall of Famers necessarily, but I've had some good players. Yeah. It's probably why I'm not managing anymore. But I think there's no question. Oh, Shohei Otani, there's another one.
Yeah.
I think without question, Mike Trout's a Hall of Famer. This guy is the size of a linebacker, the speed of a wide receiver, and the power of pick a name, any power hitter out there.
So while we're talking about some of the guys that you had with the Angels, what was it like managing Trout and Otani? Or was Otani there after, before? Did he show up after you had already left?
No. Otani was there. He came the year before I managed there. I was a special assistant, and we got him that year, so I knew him from then. But Shohei is extremely self-sufficient. He's extremely intelligent. He knows his swing. He knows what he wants to do with it. Same applies to pitching. He knows his delivery. He knows what he wants the pitches to do. And he's really kind of a fanatic. Goes home and watches video at night after the games. He's as impressive as he is physically on the baseball field, and he's probably the most physically talented baseball player ever. You'd be hard pressed to tell me someone is better. He's just as outrageously fanatical about preparation. So he's easy. He self-maintains. And Trouty's, he just wants to be one of the guys. He always gets his work in. He doesn't really complain. He likes to have fun with the guys. He wants to hang out and talk baseball or talk Call of Duty or whatever it is. So those guys, they're dreams. You don't have to really do anything with them. Just put their name in the lineup.
Right.
No, I didn't have Shohei as a pitcher. He had Tommy John, so I only had him as a DH. And he also had, I think he had a little bit of knee surgery at the end of the year too, so we lost him. He missed the first month, and then he missed the last month. So I had him as a DH for maybe 4 months.
Yeah, he's quite the unicorn. I remember watching the Yankees play the Angels last season, and it was a bases loaded situation. I think it was a tie game, or we're leading by a run, and I was like, please don't pitch to him, just walk him. And next thing you know, he's hitting a grand slam and it's landing in like 12 rows deep in left field. And it's just like, man, I love this dude, but I really hate watching them play against them. So
he could be a wide receiver. I've said this multiple times. With his speed and his stride, he could be a wide receiver in the NFL.
That's nuts. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. So, we're talking about right-handed, left-handed bats now. We probably have the Yankees premier when it comes down to Judge and Soto being right-handed, left-handed in this lineup. What type of impact do you think that those two guys are going to have in the middle of the Yankees lineup?
I hope they have a huge impact. I hope Judge is driving Soto in every time he gets on base, and Soto's picking up anything in front of him when he's up. But you're not going to find on paper a better duo in any lineup, but they still got to go out there and do it, and they still got to go out there and stay healthy. A big part of success in baseball for a team is their better players staying healthy, and knock on wood, they both stay healthy.
Right.
You force the other team to pick their poison too. Do I face Soto or do I face Judge? It'd be really tough to walk Soto in front of Judge. What we really need is someone to step up behind Judge and give a little protection to him. So we have some candidates. There's some guys that can do it, but again, we need them to do it. We can't just ask and hope that they do it.
Right.
Yep. Talking about the clubhouse, there have been reports that I saw online that about Rodon that he's poised to have a bounce back year 2023. Is there anything that you could tell us about his off-season regimen and what the rest of the coaching staff is hoping to see from him this spring?
No, I mean, I don't know. I met Carlos. We had some meetings down in Tampa with the coaching staff a few weeks ago. And Carlos has been there and he's been working at the complex, and it's all hands on deck with him. And he seems, from the reports, is completely committed to quite frankly, to coming back fully, because he had the injury and then he struggled when he came back in 23. So it looks like he's determined to kind of atone for that second half of 23 and get back to being the dominant type pitcher. Because I saw him when I was a bench coach in Oakland. We played San Francisco and he was there. He was absolutely filthy.
Yeah.
The breaking balls were untouchable, and he had the riding fastball. So I would expect, and I hope that he's all the way back, but we'll see.
Right. So keeping it Yankee oriented, how did you find out that they wanted you to be the bench coach? Was it a mutual interest? Did they call you one day and ask you if you were interested? How did you end up getting back here? Because when it was announced that it was you that was coming in, I was ecstatic. I was thrilled.
It was, initially Cash had sent me a text, asked if I had any interest. And I said, yes. And he said, okay, I'm going to have Boone. He said he had mentioned my name to Booney, so he was going to have Booney reach out to me. So then I talked to Booney, told him I was interested, and then it just moved into the interview process. And the interview process took took probably a little over a week or more, because they had other guys. I think I was the first guy they interviewed, and they obviously interviewed other people as well. So it took a little time before I got the word, but I was very happy when I did.
Right. Awesome. Danny?
I want to ask about Judge and Soto again. In terms of your role as a bench coach, how much input do you have on the lineup? Like, do you and Booney talk about that pregame every day? Like, what's that process like to create the lineup every day?
Well, in talking to Booney about it, and I also spoke to Carlos Mendoza about it because he did it. He was the bench coach last year. I wanted to get an idea what he did. In talking to both of them about it, it happens after, and this is normal. This is how I did it. And this is how Mark Kotsay did it when I was a bench coach in Oakland. It's after the game that night or that afternoon. You're preparing potential lineups immediately. Whether it's 1, 2, or 3 possibilities, depending on who needs days off or what the injury situation is. And sometimes it's pitcher dependent. Maybe you have a certain catcher with a certain pitcher, et cetera. But it's done after the game for the next game, unless you have an off day, and then you might do it on the off day for the following game.
That's awesome. Let's get Scott back into this for a minute. So let's have a little story. Let's have a little story time. Oh, go for it, Dan.
Go ahead, Daniel.
He's lagging.
Yeah.
Once I get going. Yeah, my internet sucks. Sorry. But what type of information are you going to be do you provide to Aaron, whether like to hit Soto second or Judge third? Like what goes into that decision-making process?
truthfully, you want to have your best hitters somewhere towards the top of the lineup, and you want to have your best run producer with guys on base in front of them. It's not rocket science. There's not a ton of, unless you're hitting Aaron Judge 8th and Soto 6th, it doesn't have an enormous impact. You just want your best. You want your best hitters hitting. It's pretty simple. I want, if I could, I'd line up, 4 Sotos and 5 Judges and alternate them for 9 hitters. We want our best guys hitting. So you want Soto gets on base a ton. You want to, ideally probably put him in front of, and this remains to be seen if Booney agrees, but you probably want to put him in front of Judge because Judge can hit the ball out of the yard. And then, you got guys that you filter in behind him, and maybe the guy that's swinging the bat best is the guy that hits behind Judge. Maybe a guy like Rizzo, a left-handed bat to give a little bit of right-left protection to Judge. Stanton, hopefully Stanton bounces back and has a Stanton-like year, and then he provides protection for Rizzo, or even if it's a lefty, you're sticking him behind Judge. You just want your best guys hitting. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. And also talking about sorry, my bad.
I was just saying, you just want guys on base. You want guys on base in front of the guys that are hitting.
And with respect to the lineup too, would you guys try to do the same thing regardless if it's a right-handed pitcher or a left-handed pitcher, like put the same line out up there for a lefty that you would do for a righty, or would you try to switch it up?
I don't know. That's Booney's decision. I'm guessing there certainly would be some changes made in the lineup. I don't know how much it would affect Soto and Judge because they're going to hit, but I'm sure there would be some differences in the lineup. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you got some left-handed bats that you could play against righties and right-handed bats against lefties. So.
Gotcha.
All right. So I have a question, actually. This is one for about playing time with Scott. Was there a time when you played with Scott that he got you so angry they just had to get into his face on the mound?
I don't. Hey, keep in mind that's like 30 years ago now. I don't. The main thing I remember about Sandman was his slider, and he kept shaking off to go to the slider every pitch.
I do. That's what he used to say. He used to get so mad at me. I try to strike
it was a good slider, and swings and misses are great. But he threw pretty good too. It's not like he was throwing 88.
Yeah.
Too funny.
It's like pitch the contact a little bit. Get the defense involved.
That's right. Hey, Brad, one thing I want to talk about. Every time your name comes up, he sees you on TV or something, he always asking. So, Brad he graduated from Dartmouth, which is pretty impressive why he played minor league baseball. Well, I went to Nichols State, right? 2 different levels of education, but Nichols is called Harvard on the Bayou. So, Brad, I'm sure you remember my dad brought you that shirt that said Harvard on the Bayou, and
yeah.
And Brad used to wear it under his, when he caught. That was my dad's favorite. He asked me about it the other day again. So, yeah, you made dad's life by doing that.
Harvard on the Bayou. It was. I remember that. That was funny.
Yeah,
I'm sure that I probably wore that shirt. Did I just wear it when you pitched? I can't remember.
I don't know, but you wore it a lot. I know that. I think you wore it and got some hits, and you're like, I'm keeping this thing on.
Superstition at its finest.
Probably. You might be right.
So what drove you to get involved with coaching and managing? Was it always something you wanted to do after you played, or did it manifest more and more after your playing time was done?
No, it kind of manifested while I was still playing. So at the end of my career, my last 2 years playing, I was 41 years old. And having been a catcher, I kind of got tabbed to be a manager, before I was ever hired as a manager. Mm-hmm. People thought, he might be a good manager. And then, but my last few years playing, like Phil Garner really kind of took me under his wing in Houston and explained moves to me. Joe Torre did the same thing with me in LA. He would explain if I had a question, he'd tell me what he was thinking. And they never got defensive about it. They always just explained it to me. And that was, for me, they were mentoring and I was learning. So then when I got done playing after 2010, I didn't really want to get into the everyday grind again. I hadn't had a summer off since high school. So I was looking to spend some time I want to do a couple RV trips, stuff like, go to Cape Cod where I vacationed as a kid. So I did do that, but I got hired by the Padres, where I live in San Diego, so it worked out well. I was a special assistant. It was minimal, I made my own schedule. I saw some of the minor leagues. I spent some time with the big leaguers. Got to know a lot of people in the organization. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. But after 2 or 3 years, now my name really was getting thrown around as a potential, and I was kind of like, well, if I don't strike soon, it's going to disappear. There was a handful of interviews I turned down for a few years saying I'm not ready. And I finally just told my wife, like, if I'm ever going to try and do this, I got to do it, because eventually all 30 teams are going to call and I'm going to have told them no. So then the first year I really interviewed in earnest, I think I interviewed with 4 or 5 teams, was the year that the Tigers hired me.
Cool. Very cool. And keeping it on the same track, Joe Torre, what was it like playing for him at the end of your career?
Joe was great. Such a calming presence, really never raised his voice, never yelled at umpires. He would get angry. He would occasionally have a team meeting, but it was never with a raised voice. I used to joke it. He was like E.F. Hutton. When Joe Torre talked, people listened, and people got quiet when Joe talked. Even the other, we had some veteran coaches on that staff too. And when Joe talked, they piped down. It was all ears from every level.
It's like hearing the Godfather talk, I guess, huh?
I mean, it makes sense. It's the truth. Yeah.
It's exactly what it was like. It's like hearing the Godfather talk. And the one thing I'll say about Joe, or 2 things I'll say. One, you could tell he was never unprepared. He was always prepared for what was happening on the field. He was never surprised by a move that was made by the other manager. He was always prepared. And the other thing is, he never forgot how difficult the game can be. And he remembers as a player, and he was a very good player. He remembers that it can be really, really hard.
That's true. That's true. Since we got Detroit Lions are in the playoffs right now, and you did manage over at Detroit. So what are some memorable moments or achievements that you have from managing back then?
Oh, well, I mean, we made the playoffs first year. We made a quick exit, but certainly that's a blast when you get to celebrate in your own clubhouse. We clinched against the Royals. I think it was the Royals. Maybe Royals. You think I'd remember that if it was special? It might have been. I think it was the Royals. So that was a blast. And like I said, once you've gotten over I'm trying to make money thing, all you care about is winning. And certainly the only thing coaches and managers and general managers care about is winning, much like fans. The difference is that the coaches, the managers, and general managers have to make the decisions, and the fans are rooting or letting you know that you didn't do what they liked.
That's true. That's true. And okay, it's not a follow-up, but this is a question for the young, because I love doing this question whenever there's a ball player on. What advice do you have for aspiring baseball players and managers looking to make their mark in the sport? And it doesn't even matter now. I'm going for everybody.
Well, I mean, you guys have heard this before. First of all, if you're a young kid playing and you love baseball, play baseball, but don't only play baseball. Play other sports. Play basketball. It just makes you more athletic. We talk about, players being athletic. If you're just playing baseball, I get you're going to get better, but I think you can play less baseball, play some basketball, or play some football, or I don't care, play pickleball, play something else that works other aspects of your athleticism. It's going to make you a better baseball player.
Yeah. So, Brad, I know you've been obviously played for so many years, amazing catcher. You've been in the front office. You've been on the bench as a manager. You've been on the bench as a bench coach. And so from when you and I played to now, I mean, think about back. Tony Gwynn was one of the first guys watching film, and then obviously all of you guys was that's all who we looked up to, obviously. But now with the analytics to come in, you've been on both sides where front office is sending down analytics to the bench, and how do you try to juggle that in a day to day to try to, because baseball's thing about Joe Torre is still about how many games he won off of gut feels and moves that he's made. How do you juggle that nowadays with the way they shove analytics down to the dugout?
First of all, I'm glad you brought up Tony, because Tony was 100% the first guy I can ever recall. You remember he had that little that little TV with the little tapes that he would play on the plane, and he'd slow him down and look at his swings and analyze. Matter of fact, I bought one because Tony had one.
Yeah.
And then Tony had that big video room created just off the side of the clubhouse and he hired that guy Mike Hauser.
Mike Howder.
Mike Howder, who worked at a local TV station to do all the video controls, and Tony was ahead of his time when it came to that. There's no question. In terms of today's all the data and information. So when I was a catcher, I actually used data. It's my last 10 years. It was not the type of data. It's not as accurate as the data. It's not as much information as they have now. It's not even close. But I always relied on data because I created the scouting reports for the opposing lineups when I was in Houston and in LA. And I found the data from that perspective to be extremely valuable. There's tons more data now. I do think data is going to point you in the right direction most of the time. I really do. Sometimes you got to have the experience or the baseball wherewithal to see something happening in front of you and maybe go against the data, or you see something that forces you to go against the data. But it's going to point you in the right direction over 162 games. Mm-hmm. I think where it becomes a little bit more of a crapshoot is in the playoffs, because in the playoffs it's only 7 games or 5 games. Right. And in 5 or 7 games, the data doesn't always play out the way it does over 162 games. Okay. So it's a little shakier. I think that's sometimes why you see teams teams that were super successful during the regular season, not necessarily going as deep into the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. It's a little bit of a crapshoot in the playoffs. Like, you play a hot team, there's nothing you can do about it. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't think data was extremely valuable.
Right. Yeah. Danny and I go back and forth all the time talking about analytics versus gut feeling. And, I'm more of a batting average RBI guy. Danny is like, no, you can't only look at that. I just want both worlds to mesh and make sense, essentially, is all I want.
Yeah. You could just take, OPS or WOBA, and it's going to be a better predictor of success than batting average. Is it perfect? Absolutely not perfect. I think what most teams are trying to do, they understand that it's never going to be perfect. They're trying to be as right as possible, knowing they're not always going to be right. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Makes perfect sense.
It does. Personally, I love OPS Plus and WRC Plus. Those are my 2 go-tos when it comes down to looking at players. But one last question before we let you go, and we're coming up on that time. When you make out a lineup 1 through 9 of players you played with or that you managed, who's cracking that lineup 1 through 9?
Well, Trout, Miguel Cabrera. Let's see, if I go around the field, like Miguel Cabrera, put him at first. Trout would be in center. I might have to move Cabrera to third, because I might need Bagwell at first. And Miggy played some third.
Yeah, he did.
Kinsler would probably be. Oh no, Biggio at second.
Yeah.
Pitchers. We're talking, Clemens, Pettitt, Oswalt. In the bullpen, it'd be guys like Wagner, Trevor Hoffman, Brad Lidge, Carlos Beltran would be another. He'd probably put him in center and move Trout over to right or left. I know I'm forgetting people, but
That's
you
right.
know, I'd have to. Oh, Justin Verlander, Max
Tony Gwynn.
Scherzer, they'd be in.
No
Tony
Mariano,
Gwynn,
huh?
Tony Gwynn. I never had Mariano, so I can't count it. I'm just saying guys I played with or managed.
I thought we were talking overall from your
Yeah.
playing days as well.
Yeah.
So never
No,
mind.
I meant guys that I was on the team with.
I got you.
And Tony Gwynn. You know, I mean,
Yep.
somebody's going to be on the pine, and they're not going to be happy.
Yeah, don't want to do that. Don't want to.
Imagine that 7, 8,
Brad,
9. Lidge, Wagner, Hoffman. Woo.
good luck getting a hit.
Yeah.
Hey, we had in I think in 03 maybe we had pretty close. We had Lidge, Dotel, Wagner.
Wagner. Yep.
Yeah.
That's when you
Hey,
guys
Brad,
don't hit
that-
us.
that-
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
you're right.
Yeah.
The one
Oh
thing-
God, that game, man. I was
These-
like, how are we
these-
not getting a hit?
These three guys, when I tell you, they know the Yankees organization from top to bottom. So if you ever need help making out a lineup, you can
Call
call
us.
all three of these guys. And all three of them will give you something different and argue with you why they should be right.
I'll just pass your numbers on to Booney.
Yeah. And like
We'll
when you
appreciate
create the
that.
lineup,
We'll have
when
him on
you
next
create,
week.
Yeah,
when we give you the
especially Alex.
lineup card.
Yeah,
when we
Alex
give you-
will definitely argue.
No,
Alex
no,
will
see,
argue
see,
down with Booney
I-
for sure.
one
I'm
at a
okay
time.
bashing. I'm okay bashing you guys. I'm not gonna bash the guys that are actually getting paid for it because let them do their job. Because you know what, I'm gonna stay over here and just be over here observing and then doing more Monday morning quarterback. I'm not going to be that guy that's going to be in charge of doing the big decisions.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We had a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Alex wanted to bat Giancarlo Stanton 7th. And I was
Yes.
like, dude, you can't bat him 7th because he won't see a fastball the whole season.
Scott was losing his mind. He's like, no, you can't do that. Stop.
You got to push him
stop.
up and protect him with Glaber or somebody so he sees something besides breaking balls.
I look at the numbers, and the numbers are that that's where he should be. But if it was a guy there, it's not there. I get it, and I understand, and I will be angry about it. But it is what it is.
I think you should watch the Yankees games with a pad and pen, and as the game's going, not when things go south, but before they happen, you start writing down, okay, we should take this guy out here, we should pinch hit here, and then do that for a little while. And you don't have to do it for the whole season. Do that for a while, and see how many times you were right.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
It's a little experiment I'm going to work on this season. I think.
Because Brad, you can tell them how hard it is because the game moves fast when you're in it.
Oh yeah, it does.
The game moves fast.
I mean, you can do it as a Monday morning quarterback, but you've already seen what's happened. So now I want you to do it before it's happened because that's what managers are doing.
Yeah.
And so just in case you do take one of our lineup suggestions, just make sure you put sponsored by Bronx Muchachos podcast with our logo on it.
Oh, don't worry about it. I will make sure that everyone knows you did the lineup, and then you can answer all the questions.
Yeah. We'll make Alex a spokesman. Hey, Alex, go on. You're up. Your turn.
I will become a ghost on the whole social media, sir.
Somewhere Mark is banging his head off a wall right now. But anyway, Bradley, we really appreciate you spending some time with us tonight. We understand this time of year starts getting crazy. So from all of us here, we definitely just wanted to say thank you for making yourself available and coming on with us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was good talking to you guys. Had some fun.
Yeah. And before we go, just going to get to some last housekeeping type things. So Pink Ball's got their event coming up February 17th in South Florida. Tanya Sertz and Michelle Stallone are putting up together a softball tournament. It's February 17th. If you want to register a team, use the email uses2000@gmail and get a hold of them there. Also, little Anaia still needs a kidney transplant. She's been in Boston Children's Hospital since the day she was born in August. The family is seeking healthy possible donors with type O blood. All medical expenses are completely covered. And Alexia, the mom, has given us permission to share her phone number. Anyone can contact her directly if they have questions. 401-688-6549. Again, 401-688-6549. They have had some luck in getting some people tested to be possible donors. So things are starting to go in the right direction, but she is still in the ICU and at Boston Children's Hospital. So that's going to do it for us tonight. For Brad, for making himself available to us. We thank you again. For Danny, Sandman, Alex, and Mark who couldn't be here, this is David, Bronx Muchachos, and we are signing off.
Peace. Thank you, brother.
All right. You got it.